All right, welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, July 12th. We'll call this meeting to order. We're going to ask folks with us if you are both willing and able to rise for the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Today's invocation will be delivered by Pastor Debbie Garrett of the Open Door Homeless Resource Center. Pastor, thank you for being here.
Let us bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we are gathered here today to say thank you. Thank you for watching over us last night and allowing us to arise this morning fully clothed and in our right minds with health and strength. Father, today we lift up to you our Mayor, Brandon Whipple, and the City Council leaders of Wichita. It is our prayer that they work together with all integrity and transparency as they serve this city and the communities they represent. Search their hearts, Lord, and remove all bitterness, resentment, prejudice, and racism so that they may effectively serve this city. Bless and protect their families from all evil. Father, we lift up to you our interim police chief, Lynn Moore, and our police officers, firefighters, and other frontline workers and their families as they put their lives on the line to help keep our city safe. Father, we know that only you are omniscient and omnipresent, all-knowing and everywhere. So send forth your warring angels to stand at the gates of this city to protect us from COVID-19 and from whoever the enemy is using to harm others with mass shootings, use of knives and explosives. We want them exposed and stopped now before it's too late. Now, Lord, help us to remember the less fortunate, those struggling with mental illness, and the homeless in our communities. In Jesus' mighty name, we pray. Amen. United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Pastor. Madam Clerk.
Approve the minutes of the regular meeting on July 5th, 2022.
Has every member had a chance to review the minutes, and if so, is there any discussion? If there is no discussion on said minutes, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Members will cast their vote. Having received 78 votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 14.
Has every member had a chance to review the consent agenda, and if so, is there any discussion? If there is no discussion on the consent agenda, then I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast their vote. Having received 78 votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Report of Board of Bids and Contracts dated July 11th, 2022.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Josh Lauber, Department of Finance, for the Board of Bids recommendation dated July 12, 2022. First item for engineering is the stormwater sewer number 766 Central and I-135 stormwater system repair recommendation for utility maintenance contractors LLC in the amount of $119,875. Paving Chateau Bonita to serve Cedar Creek Addition for Conspec Incorporated DBA Kansas Paving in the amount of $354,325.50. Water distribution system to serve through build addition to defer July 18, 2022. For purchasing, we have the refurbished elevators at City Hall for Kone Incorporated for an aggregate bid total of $3,014,308. And for airport, we have the airport renovations of Customs and Border Protection Facility Phase 2 for Donlinger and Sons Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $1,602,000. This is how to become a vendor with the City of Wichita. These are our current open requests for proposals. And I'll stand for any questions and recommend you approve the bid boards as recommended.
Questions from staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? Since there's no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Having received 6 votes, that motion does pass. 7 votes, yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and request for letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, McCasey Investments, LLC, Wichita Machine Products.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the item before you today is a request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for Wichita Machine Products. Wichita Machine Products was founded in Wichita in 1980. It is a manufacturer of small to medium-sized precision products and assemblies for aerospace and defense markets. It sold in 2016 to Jeremy McCasey, who is the current owner and president of the company. It is located at 2930 South Old Lawrence Road, but is moving to the southeast corner of 47th Street South and West Street to build a new corporate headquarters. This aerial here shows 47th Street running through the middle from left to right, and West Street running through the middle of the aerial from top to bottom. The area outlined in red is approximately 6.6 acres that the company is acquiring to build their new facility at. Again, the company is acquiring approximately 6.6 acres and plans to build approximately 18,750 square foot building for manufacturing and office space. It is requesting a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $2.5 million. This site plan shows West Street on the left side of the site plan and 47th Street on the north side, and shows where the 18,750 square foot facility would be built. Obviously, this gives them lots of room for growth in the future. Jeremy McCasey will acquire and construct the new building through McCasey Investments, LLC, and will lease the facility to Wichita Machine Products. Wichita Machine Products currently employs 11 in Wichita and projects that will add 6 new employees over the next 5 years with annual wages in excess of $54,000 a year. The company, the project qualifies for a 90% tax abatement, 40% based on the capital investment of $2.5 million, 30% based on the job creation of 6 net new jobs, 10% for being in the manufacturing sector of the regional growth plan, and 10% for utilizing state of Kansas incentives. There will be no abatement on the land. The estimated value of a 90% abatement based on $2.2 million investment in real property improvements is approximately $66,500 a year, with the city's share being a little over $18,000. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which shows an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.59 to 1 for the city, 1.28 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 2.58 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. Jeremy McCasey, who is the owner and president of the company, is here and can answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
Other questions for staff? Seeing none. Is there input from the public on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there's no further discussion, the chair recognizes Councilmember Blubaugh.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Excited to see the growth of Wichita Machine Products and the new addition of Southwest Wichita. So I'd like to take the staff's recommendation to close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Clerk, open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and request for letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, Ericcel Inc.
Again, Mayor and council members, Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the next item is a request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for Ericcel. Ericcel was founded in Wichita in 1966 by Sheldon Coleman. It is a manufacturer of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems for recreational vehicles. It sold in 2021 to Thor Industries and is located at 3050 North St. Francis, which is just north of 29th Street and west of I-135. This aerial here shows the outline of the facility at 29th and St. Francis. Again, you can see Broadway on the left side running from top to bottom, and you can see I-135 on the right side of the aerial. The company is building a 100,000 square foot addition for manufacturing and approximately 12,000 square foot addition of office space. The company is requesting a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $18 million. In this aerial, you can see St. Francis running along the right side of the picture. At the very top is 29th Street. The area that you can see in the dark shaded gray area is the new 12,000 square foot office addition, and the manufacturing addition is off to the left side, or what would be the east side of this aerial. This is an architectural rendering of what the office space would look like. The company currently employs 586 employees in Wichita and projects that it will add 35 new employees over the next 5 years with annual wages in excess of $47,000 a year. The project does qualify for a 100% abatement. That's a 60% abatement based on the $18 million capital investment, 40% abatement for the 35 net new jobs, 10% for being in the manufacturing sector of the regional growth plan, and again, no land will be abated. The estimated value of a 100% property tax abatement based on an $18 million investment is approximately $383,000 a year, with the city's share being approximately $108,000. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which shows an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.31 to 1 for the city, 1.11 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.9 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. Rob Leach and Sandy Jessup are here on behalf of Ericsell and can answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Bluebow.
I've been following Ericsell for a while. I'd love you to share some of the growth that you guys have had with us. If you want to come up to the podium and tell us, because you guys have done some great things over there.
We'll shift into public comment.
Good morning, I'm Rob Leach. Put this up a little bit. President of RV Products. Joined the company in 2006. At that time, we were about 85 to 90 to 100 production workers. And since that time, we've grown to, well, we were over 600 at one time when the COVID came out of COVID. The growth pattern has averaged about 12% a year. We're very progressive in the thought process of cooling an air conditioner or cooling a coach. We bought MaxAir 2012, expanded that line. Since then we bought it. It has multiplied by almost 10 in the 10 years that we've owned it. We have continued growth planned now that we're owned by Thor, which is the world's largest producer of RVs, to get into the European market, which is we haven't really tapped into. We've already grown our MaxAir side over there by up to 20 million. So from 0 to 20 million in the last 3 years. But other than that, it's been a fun ride. It's been a lot of work. When I started, we were one shift. Now we run 3 shifts. We've ran out of space. We're building 2,100 pieces where we used to build 700 pieces in the same building. So it's been a lot of work, and we've had to go to the outside for warehousing and use other alternatives. Any questions?
I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate you guys growing your company right here.
Oh, yeah, we have other, well, we want to broaden RVP beyond the air conditioning side and ventilation side. We've actually started looking at refrigeration, so got some good plans anyway. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Further input from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion? If there's no further discussion, the chair recognizes Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just also like to appreciate all of the growth in District 6 and within your business. So with that, I move that we take staff's recommended action, close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Have received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
2023 Annual Operating Budget and 2023 to 2032 Capital Improvement Program.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you. Bob Layton, City Manager. I am very pleased today to present to you the 2023 Annual Operating Budget, or at least the recommended operating budget, and the 10-year Capital Improvement Program. There are a lot of good things to talk about, and we've had a pretty robust process just to get to this point. Before I get started, I do want to thank staff for all the work they've put into developing this budget under your direction. From the retreats, I want to thank Elizabeth Goldtree, who heads up our budget office, and all of her staff, Mark Manning, who she reports to and who's also taken an active role in the capital improvement program, Dante Martin, who helped organize and work with our CIP staff committee to get to this point today. I'm going to talk just real briefly about our budget development environment, give you an overview of the budget, talk about some of the key issues from the operating budget and the capital improvement program, and then talk about the timeline for the adoption of the documents. Just so everybody understands, the document is available online, and you can get it through our website or review it through our website, and you can also look at physical copies at our libraries. Especially the operating budget. As you know from the retreats, our revenues have been stronger than we anticipated coming out of COVID. I'm extremely pleased to say that I think our community is coming out stronger after the pandemic, and that's because of some really hard work, not just by the mayor and council, but also by the business community and some very strategic initiatives that have been started. You just heard about one business who has come out of the pandemic strong, and I think you're seeing that throughout our business community. Very robust input into this process. You had 2 retreats that helped shape the policy direction for these documents. And then we took that information that you provided us in some of your guidance and even some of your questions, and we took those out to the community, and we had a very robust public engagement process. We had the social media town hall. We also utilized the budget simulator again this year, and new was the use of forum. And even though we didn't have a lot of people participate in forum, we had very robust discussion across that platform. And we will continue to promote that, not just for the budget going forward, but for other key policy issues that the city's facing over the next year. As a result of the strong revenue growth that we've seen, or the strong revenue performance that we've seen in 22 and project to see in 23, we are able to free up some more ARPA dollars for one-time capital expenses for eligible projects that meet the ARPA guidelines. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. And then the one issue I do want to plant in the back of your minds is that as we put this together, we're trying really hard to come up with a sustainable operating budget, not just for 2023, but one that'll position you well for the future. And as you know, we could have some financial challenges in 25 and 26, especially depending on what happens with the national economy. A reminder that we use the city's mission to drive our expenditures, and we categorize all of our programs into these key areas in the mission statement. I won't read those to you because you've seen it a lot, but it's just a reminder, and you'll see those throughout my presentation. The first element that we're going to talk about is keeping Wichita safe. This budget and CIP will provide for the construction of 9 fire stations over the 10-year period at a cost of $45 million. And you've allocated $1 million for each of the next 3 years in ARPA funds to help implement the recommendations that come forward on the optimization plan. And that we are anticipating that'll be primarily for staffing needs. Also, there are 3 new police stations that are budgeted in the capital improvement program at a cost of $31 million. As you know, 1 station is in progress, so at the end of the 10-year period, we'll have 4 new stations in place. And then there's $74 million in additional public safety equipment, including $40 million for additional fire trucks. Keeping with the theme of keeping Wichita safe, One of the things that came out of our forum, that came out of our public engagement and also out of the council discussions was the need to shore up what we're doing in animal control. And so we have a plan for getting more people on the street throughout the day, which is, especially in the morning hours, which has been difficult for us in the past. Addressing violent crime in what I consider to be a fairly creative way, following the model of some other cities. We're going to be introducing a violence interrupter program this year. We're out for proposals right now to get guidance on how to put that program together and follow what we're going to call a Wichita model, which may be unique for us. And then I think one of the key takeaways from this budget to address the mental health concerns that police officers run into on almost a daily basis, we're recommending to you that we implant social workers inside the police department, and that we have the social work expertise available to all of our police officers should they encounter someone in mental health crisis. In terms of growing our economy, a few things I want to highlight. We have seen significant commercial development over the last 6 months, and that has really taxed our staff to the point where we've actually talked about slowing down the approval process in order to be able to move plats and site plans forward. As a result of that backlog in activity, and we are recommending that we add new positions in planning to address that workload challenge. Council recently approved a 20-year special assessment pilot program, and that we hope will help our housing starts throughout the community. And then again, reflective of what you talked about in the retreat and what you've heard from your constituents, illegal dumping cleanup and enforcement efforts will be expanded under this budget. ARPA has played a key role in terms of helping us come out of the pandemic in a strong way from an economic standpoint. You have already allocated $10 million for small business assistance and workforce development and $5 million for affordable housing, plus $1 million for food insecurity. You have approximately $4 million more for community initiatives, and you'll make that determination later on this year. Our preliminary recommendation is that money be held for a capital project related to mental health and substance abuse in the community. In terms of dependable infrastructure, we've heard from the community this last year regarding crosswalk markings and some challenges that are presented, especially in the areas of schools. And we are now going to, in this budget, we'll advance our crosswalk program so that all of our crosswalks are repainted on a 2-year cycle. We're also paying attention to an area that I think was neglected in the capital improvement for a long period of time, and that is upgrading of our city facilities. And that's the last infrastructure category that we brought forward to you with a long-range plan for upgrading and improvements. This came up in discussions during the retreat. I just want to highlight that almost 1/2 of the CIP is designated for maintenance of current assets. Street maintenance is something that I know all of you hear about from your constituents, your residents. This CIP includes $141 million for maintenance and upgrade of city streets over the next 10 years. Those are existing paved streets. A reminder that about 12 years ago, we only put $4 million a year. This is now an average of $14 million a year that will be going into street maintenance. On top of that, a new council initiative would allow us to put down asphalt paving on existing dirt streets, starting with those streets that are in the vicinity of schools, and then moving into the city's most disadvantaged neighborhoods, those that would have difficulty in terms of funding full permanent paving through special assessments. Also in infrastructure, we have $42 million going into a number of what we call multimodal projects, which include bike paths, sidewalks, and signal improvements. And we will continue to work on coordination of our signal system, which hopefully will be completed in about 50 years. That's facetious but reflective of the frustration I've had on these projects. So, conditions for living well, very important to our community, and there are 3 library initiatives that I'm especially happy to highlight here that I think will make a big impact in the community. In order to remove barriers to use of our libraries and to improve equity considerations for library use, we are recommending that the overdue fee structure be eliminated from the library. Also, we are recommending an increase in the materials purchases for the library, including more emphasis on online content, which has become heavily used since the start of the pandemic. And then a position that the council asked us to look at a couple of years ago, if you remember, we removed funding from what we were doing for early childhood education. And the question was, how do we come alongside those agencies that are working in this area in a way that makes some sense? And so we have a new strategic initiative that has been advanced by the library board that would allow us to hire a family literacy coordinator that would help move us towards that goal of kindergarten readiness. A lot of talk about forestry, and we have some changes in our approach to the purchase and planting of trees, and through the budget recommendations, we will see additional trees planted during the upcoming year. I'll ask staff to supplement my comments on this if you have questions, but if I remember, at least 1,000 new trees above and beyond what we have been doing in the past will be provided for under the budget. And then you will be funding the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition. That partnership was discussed during your en banc with the county, and this is one of the recommendations for the city in order to help address that important mental health and substance abuse problem that's facing our community. I'd like to tell you that one of the key takeaways and one of the highlights of this budget and CIP is the maintenance and improvement of Century 2. At this point, we're recommending that Century 2 be identified as an important gathering place for this community, that it be seen as a home for small conventions, and that it also remain as a home for consumer shows. And in order to be able to accommodate all of those program needs, we're recommending $18 million over the 10 years for improvements to Century 2. We've had a pretty extensive review of the facility performed by an outside engineering firm, and they have given us an engineering architectural firm, and they have given us a number of recommendations on bringing the building up to snuff. It includes replacement of the roof, the heating and cooling systems, elevator systems, and a number of other items. There's almost, if I remember, there's over $9 million in the first year in 2023, and those will address some of the most immediate needs, including some that are safety related. Keeping with the Living Well theme, a number of park improvements that are planned. We know from the public that there are concerns about upgrading our facilities, whether they're our ball fields or our shelters, and plus a continued demand for dog parks. And so those are all accommodated in this budget. We are also recommending the first phase of implementation of the CLAP Master Plan and continued improvements in Watson Park and Proct wetlands, again, following the long-range plans for both of those facilities. And then, keeping with the branch library study, we have $6.5 million in the CIP for upgrading of four branch libraries. In terms of the concept of operating a well-run city, probably the most important thing is to make sure that we have fair compensation systems for all of our employees, and you have addressed that in some of our union contracts that were approved last year, and will do so as we move forward with our union contracts this year. We also do not intend to leave behind those city employees that are not represented by collective bargaining agreements. Excuse me. We know the challenges that have been presented by COVID. We're in a much more competitive market for talent. We want to retain the folks that we have, and we want to be an employer of choice for those that are coming into the organization. And so we have built in sufficient funds to be able to address that, as well as the economic challenges our employees are facing, and that's inflation and what could be an upcoming recession as well. I just want to go over a few of the charts that we always take a look at in terms of the general fund and the CIP. Here you'll see that this is the proposed budget for 2023, And it talks about the major revenue categories for to finance that budget. You'll see that property tax is the number one revenue source, but franchise fees and sales tax follow behind. In terms of how we spend our dollars, over 70% of our budget goes to police, fire, and public works and utilities. Again, that's in the general fund, and that has not changed in the last several years and reflects, I think, both the council's priorities as well as the community's priorities. I will note, though, that we have stabilized and actually enhanced what we're doing on the what I would call our quality of life programming, which includes the cultural arts, parks and recreation, and library. And again, a reminder on how difficult it can be to balance a budget. 74% of our total operating budget, and at least the general fund budget, goes to salaries and benefits. And so any changes that are made, unfortunately, are reflected in terms of our staffing levels. This is a reminder and an update of the way the council has intended to use ARPA funds. You have approved $4.5 million for special initiatives, and that's the violence interrupters and the fire optimization implementation. We are now at a point of financing about $33 million with ARPA for infrastructure projects. I've already talked about the $20 million for community initiatives, and now we're projecting we'll need about a little over $14.5 million to help balance the general fund through 2024. On the CIP, again, we want to make sure that we conform to the city council's benchmarks and guidelines, and that we reflect the priority decisions that were made last year and try to stay true to those as much as possible, recognizing some changing financial conditions. This is the revenue pie chart for the CIP. You'll see that we're pretty balanced in terms of our revenue sources. In terms of how we spend our money, it's exactly what you expect. Significant amount of money for water and sewer, significant amount for streets and freeways, and special assessments take up almost a little over $300 million, and that's for construction of infrastructure in new subdivisions. We talked about this during the last retreat. This recommended CIP is successful in terms of keeping the debt service mill levy rate at 7 mills, which is where it is now. All of our water and sewer rates are consistent with the modeling that has been shared with you in the past. And we are meeting all of our guidelines and benchmarks for debt. This is the chart that you look at the most often. It has to do with our general obligation debt as a percentage of our property tax revenues. Your benchmark is 67%, and you'll see that we're below that. Just talk real briefly about statutory requirements affecting the budget and the schedule. Today I'm asking you to set the final date of hearing for the budget, which will be in August, and then also to establish the maximum amount. So what you establish today as the budget, you will not be able to exceed that under state law as you go forward through the hearings. You can reduce it, you can trade out expenses, cannot increase. And then also I want to talk a little bit about the revenue neutral rate, which is has to be established by the council on by July 20th, and we need to submit that to the county. What we call the revenue neutral rate, or if you want to call it a tax lid, was implemented by the legislature a few years ago. It says that any increase in the property tax dollar amount levied triggers a tax lid exemption. And what that means is that if the council continues what it's done for 29 years, and that is to use the same mill rate or mill levy rate to balance this budget or to fund this budget, that you will be required to submit to the county and to the state the notification that we will be exceeding the tax lid even though you haven't changed the mill levy rate. If you were to follow the tax lid or adhere to the tax lid, you would need to trim $10 million out of the initiatives that are contained in the budget that I'm recommending to you today. In the SMID, in our visits with downtown development, they have asked to also exceed the the revenue neutral rate for the SMID, allowing them to capture about another $50,000 for improvements and projects in the downtown. Here is your budget calendar. Today is the presentation of the recommended budget. Council had asked for an evening meeting this year, and so so we've got one scheduled for August 4th. Then we'll have a hearing here during the day on August 16th, and then we're asking you to approve the operating budget and the CIP on August 23rd. So the recommended action for today is to establish the formal public hearing for the budget at August 23rd, authorize publication of the formal public hearing notice, authorize notification of the council's indication to exceed the revenue neutral rate, and receive and file the proposed capital improvement program. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Also, I have staff available to address maybe any detailed questions you have regarding any program item.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Bob, just two questions on the $18.1 million for C2. Is that above and beyond the $2.5 million council's already allocated over 10 years?
No, that's incorporated in, the 2.5 is incorporated.
And then, I should have asked you about this earlier, but with all of the conversations about wages, are we going to do a wage study to look at comparable positions in the region and see where we're at?
We've tried to do that through all of our negotiations with the unions. We're in the middle of discussions right now on competitive rates with both the Teamsters and the firefighters. We did the same thing last year with SEIU and with FOP. So we are using that data. And of course, then what we do for our non-union employees is driven on what's happening with our unions.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation, Bob. Just a couple of quick questions. One, I appreciate the more direct funding of capital projects with the ARPA dollars. That's a good use of it. But I am concerned about the general fund support using ARPA dollars, especially as we look into the out years. So my question is, how does it relate to our staffing levels pre-COVID to this budget, FTEs? And I know you probably don't have that at your fingertips, but I'm concerned that we may be growing government using ARPA funding.
Sure.
So I'd like to know what that FTE number was in 19 compared to this budget.
Sure. I think I've highlighted most of the initiatives that would add staff, and it's still a pretty limited addition. The exception may be in fire after we're done with the optimization study, and I understand the concern after the $1 million expires in ARPA, and that is an issue that we need to be talking about as we go forward. Elizabeth, do you want to hazard a guess regarding our position growth?
In the back of the budget book, we include a position summary for every year. We don't have 2019 in this book. I think it just compares back 1 year. So I could go find that information and provide it to you. I would guess since 2019, most of the growth would probably be in the police department. And in fact, I think during 2020, we actually eliminated some positions that had been frozen for a long time in recognition that they wouldn't be filled. But I'd be happy to do that research for you and provide that.
My second question is related to the CIP funding for dirt streets. How does this affect the OP3 funding that we've been dedicated for street maintenance and the arterials? Again, I understand the need and the challenge finding $31 million to pave dirt roads, but you know, the number one issue that I get from my neighbors are streets, all streets, arterial roads, potholes. How does this affect that OP3 funding going forward?
The $31 million comes from that pool that we had previously projected for our maintenance of and upgrade of permanent streets, permanently paved streets. We have allowed for growth in that category in our existing street maintenance efforts. So it's not as if all of the growth was diverted to the dirt road paving. It's kind of, if I remember, it's almost a 1-for-1 in terms of new money or additional allocations going to each of those categories.
So we're not cutting into the OP3 budget for ongoing maintenance. It's just not going to be as aggressive maybe as we've been in the past.
That's a great way to describe it, yes.
That's all I have.
Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. Bob, thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to maybe see if you could clarify a little bit about the dog parks. I think for the next 2 years, there's 300,000, and I'm considering maybe shifting some money that's in the CIP to the dog park over on Meridian, or the Meridian Dog Park, I'm sorry. But I was just curious if you could elaborate on what the 300,000 is going towards, and if any of that you think might already be going to the Meridian Dog Park.
Yes. I don't know that we have identified specifically the dog parks that would receive the 300,000. And so if there's desire to earmark, we can either do it out of that 300,000, or we can move projects around in the capital improvement to give that some priority. And that ultimately, that's up to you as the district council member and the council members approving that as a change of the CIP. We also do have money in for a brand new dog park, which we've been talking about for a period of time in District 5.
Right, I'm totally supportive of that. Just in the last budget meeting that we had, I can't remember, one of the staff members mentioned that we wouldn't expand, like part of that is we have to maintain what we have already. So I know there's some improvements that we'd like to do over in our area too. So I just want to make sure that some of that money is not already allocated before I potentially shift.
If you'd like, before the night hearing on August 4th, I think it is, we can bring a report back on the dog parks, what's planned out of the 300,000, and then talk about Meridian.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this is the appropriate place to say this, but since it's dealing with the CIP, I'd like staff to develop a funding plan for a new District 3 Neighborhood Resource Center and move funding that we have, look at moving the funding that we have down the road for Plainview Park.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Yep, and we'll bring that back to you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
Would you like, I'm sorry, Councilmember, would you like that to be part of this CIP? Because then we can bring a plan forward that can be incorporated into the final CIP.
Yes, if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
See no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now for public comment.
Andrew Crane, Guiding Paws ICT. I didn't see anything on Wichita Transit or bus. And guys, it's a big thing here in Wichita. And that's got to be included in that. So that's one of my questions. And then on the dog parks, are you guys going to put relief areas for guide dogs and service animals? And in downtown, in the downtown area, please. Thank you.
Bob, would you like to respond?
Mayor, regarding bus service, that was, I think, part of an extensive discussion the council's had during the retreats. And we are working with WAMPO for the development of a long-term plan for improvements and expansion of our system. And next year, in 2023, we'll have the results of that. Mike Tan's here, and he can talk more about that initiative if you'd like. Regarding the wastes for service dogs downtown, that's a new issue that I'm not aware of, and I just have to ask staff to take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further public input? Welcome.
Good morning. Do me a favor. Please make sure the budget documents you put out there to the public are correct. I hate to waste staff's time and my time trying to make sense of incorrect documents. It has been a source of frustration for me to look at city documents, realize something did not make sense, spend time trying to search for the correct answer, and then find out the information was wrong. The numbers were incorrect. An exhibit was mislabeled. Please make sure you publish correct documents. For example, the budget documents today contain two boundary maps, the East Bank TIF and the West Bank TIF, and the boundaries overlap. And I wondered how this was legally possible and how incremental property tax was distributed. I searched on the website using East Bank tax increment financing, and I got 510 results. Can you imagine how difficult it is for me to try to figure out what the right answer is? If I can't search for documents, how can the city be transparent? If I can't search on how you voted for a project, how can I hold you accountable? If I am seeing inaccurate documents on the agenda, why aren't you finding them too? Here's my initial budget questions. I have asked for this before and will ask for it again in the budget 2023. Put money aside for an advanced online search feature that searches the entire website as well as past city council meetings. So when I search for East Bank TIF, it will come up, not 510 documents over 6 pages of unrelated material. Put a more robust budget simulator model to the public. Give us options on revenue and debt. The CID guidelines say that a business or a tenant cannot relocate out of the CID, and this is part of the budget, the money you get from CID districts. So how did Peace, Love, and Pie relocate to Bradley Fair? They're a tenant. Sure, they changed the name and offer cookies and cakes as well as pies, but who gave them permission to leave the CID? Put someone in charge of CID compliance. It was recently discovered that there was a business in a CID district that wasn't charging the tax and didn't know they were supposed to and had no signage. Do we have an internal auditor position staffed yet? Is it in the budget for next year? The budget shows proposed improvements to Century 2. Please follow through. There were $26 million budgeted for Century 2 in 2009 in the CIP. It didn't happen. There was $4 million budgeted for the roof. It didn't happen either. So while I am pleased to see CIP money for Century 2, I'm going to wait and see if we actually spend it. And here's the flip side to that. Where are you budgeting for the historic tax credits that offset these expenses? Has anyone applied for them yet? Have you started the process to get these tax credits to sell to help with these costs of Century 2? I know I've spoken about this many times. I hope that's in place. The Eagle wrote an article about the potential expansion of the Hyatt Hotel, and without detail in the budget, how do we know if this is going forward? Is this why Street? And while you're fixing the pipe main on Waco Street between Douglas and Waterman, which you're voting on later, please fix the public restroom that's there behind Century 2 on the west side next to A. Price Woodard Park. It would be so much nicer if visitors to Wichita didn't have to walk through feces to enjoy a park that's dedicated to the first black mayor of Wichita. If we're going to have feces from the homeless population, at least put them in a bathroom where there's one room that needs to be cleaned instead of throughout the steps of a park that we have beautified through landscaping and planting. I hope you've put in funds for irrigation, for planting flowers in the downtown flower beds, and staff for parks and recreation, because we've done what we could this year with Lowe's, and I'm not sure we can continue to do the effort we have done to maintain and plant 1,000 flowers to beautify downtown Wichita. A final budget selection, and it didn't come from me, it came from one of our volunteers, so I can't take credit for it, is move Visit Wichita into the former public library, put in rotating art exhibits, put your volunteers, like Save Century 2 volunteers who beautify downtown in there. When we water, it's amazing how many visitors come to Wichita, like with the USA boxing match from Florida, Georgia, even Ireland, 2 folks from Ireland, and they have no idea where to go to in Wichita, so we have become informal guides or representatives, I guess, of Visit Wichita, because we tell them they can walk to Old Town by the railroad tracks on Douglas, and they're mostly staying at the Broadview Hotel, or follow the river to the Keeper of the Plains, and we explain to folks how unique the architecture is for the library, the brutalist style, Century 2, and I don't understand why Visit Wichita doesn't do that, but perhaps if they were in that building, they'd be more visible, more active, get it filled with art displays, put us in there to help be unofficial guides, and move them. So those are some suggestions for the budget.
Thank you. Further input from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. The further discussion on this item. If there's no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action. Is there a second?
I just have to question, pardon me, a question for legal. Do we have to read the recommendation and the action as we have in the past, or can we just read and make
It
that?
would be better to have it read into the record since there are statute requirements, especially about the neutral rate.
That's what I assumed. Thank you.
Excuse me, I believe that we had worked out an abbreviated motion so that we didn't have to read through all of this.
It's fine. I'll read it. I make a motion to accept staff's recommended action to set the public hearing on the revenue neutral rate in the proposed 2023 budget, including the tax increment financing districts and the self-supporting municipal improvement districts and the recertification for the ice rink Century 2 addition recovery settlement sewer CID and TBID funds for August 23rd, 2022. Authorize publication of the formal public hearing notices. Approve first reading of the ordinances for the general tax levy for the city of Wichita, Kansas, TIF districts, and SSMID. Authorize staff to make any technical adjustments required to comply with the state statute. Set a maximum amount of taxes levied for the city of Wichita at $139,120,378 based on an anticipated mill levy of 32.758 mills and an estimated assessed valuation of is that billion? $4,246,910,900 set to the maximum amount of taxes levied for the self-supporting municipal improvement district at $749,839 based on an estimate levy of 6.737 mills and an estimated assessed valuation of $111,296,340 and authorize staff to notify the Sedgwick County Clerk of the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate of the City of Wichita taxing funds and the SSMID taxing fund. It is also recommended that the City Council receive and file the 2023-2032 proposed capital improvement program. Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk, please open the roll. Having received 6 yea votes with 1 nay vote, the item passes. Next item, please.
2023 sewer mains for future development.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Garrett Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you is a request for funding for sewer mains for future development. The adopted CIP includes annual funding for projects to construct new sewer main extensions for currently unserved areas. As the city expands, the projects will primarily serve new development with sewer availability as needed. Proposed projects are requested by developers and evaluated by the city to ensure they're in the best interest of the utility and the city overall. The account is run on a first-come, first-served basis and has been for some time. One project currently underway, utilizing previous year's funds, is the construction of a sanitary sewer main to serve Schulte Johnson's second edition. Specifically at this time, I'll talk more in just a moment about the bigger area that sewer will serve. Additionally, a request for a new sewer main to serve Harbor Isle Commercial Edition has been received. That is near K96 and Meridian. And that area would need to be served by a lift station and force main in lieu of a gravity sewer, which I'll talk about also. Just to give you some idea of how these projects work. So what you see here, the line in pink is the proposed sewer main. Part of that main has been constructed already. Pending your approval of the funding today, we'll be able to finish that project. The area that's kind of shaded a little bit in the pink also, the much larger area, is the basin that this sewer main will serve. So the funding that's included in the CIP traditionally for these sewer main extensions is to serve a much larger area, help promote development, and I'll talk about how the financing works in just a second. So again, this is in the area of Pawnee and Mays Road. There's development going on around this sewer already and much more expected in the future. The second project that I mentioned that this funding would be utilized for, to the left side of your screen is Meridian. K96 is towards the bottom. What's in the red or the purple is an currently unserved area that's expected to be mostly commercial. The way this area is developed out with gravity sewer, there's no longer the grade needed to extend that sewer to the area, so this would have to be served by a lift station and force main, which is not totally uncommon. We try to avoid that where we can because the operational and maintenance impact that it adds to us, but it's the only way to serve this area at this time. The CIP includes $1,962,500 for the extension of sewer mains in 2023. The collection of acquisition costs in the amount of 6.2 cents per square foot will reimburse the utility an estimated 50% of the cost to build the main as smaller lateral lines are extended. That funding formula has been in place for some time. We do adjust that fee on occasion to reflect current costs. With that, staff recommends City Council approve the budget, adopt the resolution, authorize necessary signature per Charter Ordinance 211. This item does require a 2/3 majority vote. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? See none. Input from the public on this item? See none. Discussion back to the bench. Further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the budget, adopt the resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. A reminder, this requires at least 5 votes. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Council member appointments and comments.
Start off with appointments. Do members have appointments? Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to appoint Janet Johnson to the Citizens Review Board and Janet Johnson to redistricting as well.
Poor Janet. Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to appoint Rachel Enix to the Library Board.
Further appointments. I will be reappointing Sedgwick County Juvenile Justice Board Mark Masterson, and then appointing to the redistricting committee Senator Aletha Vascado, Yenny Silva, Angela Orpeza, and Maria Pint. Make a motion to accept appointments.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. To speak on the motion, Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. I would like to make a substitute motion that we vote on the mayor's appointments to the redistricting as a separate item.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Substitution. Motion has been made and seconded to take out the redistricting appointments of just the mayor and to vote on them separately. So this vote is for everyone else except for the redistricting committee.
But just it still includes a Councilmember Heisel's appointment.
What?
The redistricting.
I can't hear you.
It still includes Mayor
Yeah, no, you're just targeting the
Hoheis.
4 people that I
Right.
appointed. I understand.
Yeah.
Roll's open. Go ahead and vote. I've received 7 yea votes. The original appointments, except for the 4 for redistricting committee, have been approved. Back on the appointments for redistricting. I make a motion to accept those appointments.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Speak to the motion, Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted clarification that we can do that.
So clarification that we can make appointments.
Regarding the composition of the redistricting committee, it is left to the council's discretion as to how many people are on that particular committee.
Thank you. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the votes. We ask that all members cast their votes.
I had hit the button before the voting started.
Can you indicate to the clerk what your vote would be?
Again, I hit the button beforehand to have conversation. I was not ready to vote. I just was not acknowledged.
Okay, so my apologies. Thought you were finished with the floor. So we can go, that vote didn't actually take place then, or did it take place?
Since it was 3-3 and not all council members voted, I believe that the motion can be subject to additional discussion and then brought back for a final vote.
Councilmember Johnson for additional discussion on the motion.
Thanks, Mayor. Adding additional folks to the committee is something I agree with having representation. My concern, though, is precedent. And in this case, we have a 1990 example, though there was more public engagement where every council member gave 2 appointments rather than one member of the council giving more. In this case, we would be approving 4 additional mayoral appointments without any other. Supportive of, in this case, the public discussion of adding women to the board. Have no issue with that. I think it should happen. Anybody who looks at my appointments, about half are women. 3/4 of my appointments are either women or people of color. So that's not a issue for me, but the challenge for me is the precedent being set in 2022 that each member give 1 appointment and then the mayor give additional appointments. I would be supportive if every council member was given an additional appointment, which would take the 1990 precedent set, and we'd be at 14 once again. But just doing 4 appointments at large, I think is a precedent that we should not set for future councils.
Remind the council member the precedent has already been set with the diversity committee. That is a precedent that's being followed. Clerk will open a roll. Motion still on the table. If folks want to vote no, they can. Motion has been made and seconded. Councilmember Johnson for a follow-up.
Thanks, Mayor. If we're going to make appointments, I would make a substitute motion that each member of the body be able to make an additional appointment for the redistricting committee.
That's an amended motion. The motion on the floor that is seconded is for the 4 people to be nominated. Can my motion go forward and then he can make a separate motion to empower the council to make additional appointments?
Was there a second to the substitute motion?
No.
If there was not a second to the substitute motion, then that motion dies. And then it would go back to your original motion.
Back in the original motion. So further discussion in the original motion? If not, clerk, please open the roll and we can submit our votes.
Is it up?
I'm sorry, what?
It's not up?
It's not up. Having received only 3 yea votes to 4 nay votes, Senator Aletha Falcadell, Iani Silva, Angela Orpez, and Maria Pint are not on the board. I would ask staff to direct staff to create a legal memo to the council on analysis on if this board meets the qualifications for diverse representation as described in the memo, and have that presented. With that, is there any further discussion? Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, I think as a council, we should be looking at precedents that have been set and what we consider going forward. And it should be the practice that we continue as a council to have the same types of numbers of appointments in situations like this, representative, citywide, and in regard to the much larger discussion that has been public here in the last week around DEI, I would argue that we have to be more forward-thinking when it comes to that, and DEI cannot be an afterthought. And as a practitioner of DEI myself and my lived experiences, the thing that frustrates me the most, whether it's private sector or public sector, is when something is done and then I am considered afterwards. And I am considered to then go improve something when I should have been at the forefront of that. And I think as this body, if we are going to talk about DEI, hold it to be true and practice it, then it needs to be a discussion up front. And when we know things are coming, we have to be intentional about having that discussion and making those actions and talking to the public about that as well. I cannot, going forward, and I've done it over the last couple of years because I've felt like I've had to, but we have to be more intentional on the forefront and not we're upset with the outcome of something and then look to add DEI to it. I think we should lead with DEI. If our intention is to add more women to boards, let's do that. Let's talk about it. Let's be intentional about finding those women. Same with people of color. Same with folks with disabilities or veterans. Whatever that might be, we must be intentional about reaching out to those groups of folks, finding them, making sure that they understand the assignments that they have, and go forward with doing the work rather than being an afterthought. My decision today and what I said, again, is around precedent. I know that there are those out there who have been critical, who like to say that I am not supportive of women or people of color. My appointments, my work, the things I've done over the last 2 decades have shown the opposite of that. It's out there. And on today, I do believe we should add women representation to everything. Women should be represented. They're half of our city. But at the same time, we must be thinking about that in the forefront and not as an afterthought.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. I would just like to recognize former colleague Levanta Williams today, the burial, it was memorial observance of her passing of her husband, Billy, who was a good friend to many of us. It's a very tough day for her, and I'm looking forward to being able to show her support by attending. We're thinking of you, Levanta, on this day. On a more positive note, I understand the mayor has a birthday tomorrow, so early happy birthday.
Thank you. Councilmember Ballard.
That's what I was going to share, is just everybody wish Mayor happy birthday tomorrow.
Thank you. Councilmember Tuttle. Vice Mayor Tuttle.
Thank you. And I struggled whether or not I was going to say the second part, but I feel like I have to. But first, I want to say thank you to Councilmember Johnson for your comments. I really appreciate that, and I respect the thought that we should definitely be more intentional when we're moving forward. I also, this is the part I've struggled with, but I just feel like I have to say it. I would caution this body from publicly disparaging our appointments. When we were elected to these positions, one of the privileges that came with that is that we have the ability to elect community members who we personally feel are qualified and represent our community and our districts. I have served as I had been appointed to the District Advisory Board, to other boards. I had a conversation with a dear colleague on Friday, and her comment was, I hope I never get asked to be appointed to a city board because I wouldn't want to have my name in public questioned. And so I feel that, this has been, we know it's been stressful, there's been comments made, but the public who we appoint to our boards don't deserve to have their name spoken of disparaging. If we don't agree with them, then don't vote for them. So that's just my ask for my colleagues, so that we can continue to have people who serve on our boards, and hopefully those people are fostered and developed to someday be elected to replace us. So thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their vote. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Thank you.